This is Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. Today we're going to talk about the moral depravity infecting the Republican Party. Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene was caught bragging that if she and Steve Bannon had planned the attack on January 6th against the United States, they would have won because they would have been armed. She said, if Steve Bannon and I organized, bracket, January 6th, we would have won, not to mention it would have been armed. Then she got called out by the Biden White House, and so she pulled the trump card of denying the intention that was clear to all by her words. She was being sarcastic, y'all. Why don't you get her humor? Also, Hollywood and Antifa and drag queens. That's her pivot. This tactic continues to work for those who weaponize the both sides compulsion of our modern day media. The Deputy White House Press Secretary, Andrew Bates, seemed to trigger Greene when he commented, quote, "It goes against our fundamental values as a country for a member of Congress to wish that the carnage of January 6th had been even worse, and to boast that she would have succeeded in an armed insurrection against the United States government. This violent rhetoric is a slap in the face of the Capitol Police, the D.C. Metropolitan Police, the National Guard, and the families who lost loved ones as a result of the attack on the Capitol. All leaders have a responsibility to condemn these dangerous, abhorrent remarks and stand up for our Constitution and rule of law." And then on Monday, the White House Press Secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, made the point, this is someone who's expected to have their committee positions restored, so we should let that sink in. And she didn't let it pass by that Greene is not only a member of Congress, but that all leaders have a responsibility to condemn these remarks. And by all leaders, I'm just going to highlight that for you because we're coming back to it, and his name is Kevin McCarthy. I think you can hear my dog in the background. That's Bo, the love of my life. Yes, he's doing security at the office. So Jean-Pierre Greene, oh my goodness, now I'm getting all thinking about my dog. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House Press Secretary, then said, again, this is coming from a member of Congress, and all leaders have a responsibility to condemn these dangerous, vile remarks and stand for our Constitution and for the rule of law. This is what is coming from a member of Congress, and what's more, she said this to a group that lashed out against condemning Holocaust denial. They were giving her an award. And she continued, you have heard the president warn about awful conspiracy theories and violent rhetoric that undermine the rule of law in our democracy. It's antithetical to our values as a country for a member of Congress to wish that the carnage on January 6th had been even worse, and brag that they would have succeeded in an armed insurrection against the United States government. I mean, that's the end of her quote, but it's just stunning. This is the Republican Party. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is, fair enough, an extremist in the party. However, she is getting her committee positions back, and that's where this is a very different story than just an extremist in the party. Where are the Republican leaders to condemn this? Hopeful Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, who is working to get the votes to be Speaker of the U.S. House in the new Congress, is a no-show so far. The Washington Post noted Green is scheduled to be sworn in for another term and take an oath to, quote, support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And then they pointedly ended with McCarthy's office did not respond to a request for comment Monday. Conservative Bill Kristol commented in response to that piece, McCarthy's office did not respond to a request for comment Monday. If you can't condemn the insurrection and its cheerleaders, you shouldn't be Speaker of the House. He's absolutely correct. It's funny that we've come to this point in time where there are conservatives, and Bill Kristol is one of them, with whom I would say I don't agree with a lot of the policies that he supports, but it's important to be willing to put some of that aside in order to condemn these extremists. I would love to get back to the point of debating policy. That's where we should be in this country. That's where a healthy democracy would be. We would be debating policy. And I believe that not all of liberal policy, but the way that I interpret liberal policy in general is that there's an underlying belief that all people are created equal and deserve to be treated fairly and equally under the law. And we obviously haven't achieved that in this country, but that's the underlying belief system that I believe is more often represented in policies coming from the Democratic Party. Of course, they're not perfect either. But we're just at this point where the Democratic Party is passing policy, they're debating policy, they're actually accomplishing quite a lot legislatively. They did under Nancy Pelosi anyway, and Biden and Schumer. So the Republican Party instead is focused on these, let's investigate Democrats, let's investigate Hunter Biden, let's not do anything to actually help people, but let's just keep escalating hatred and division, all of which is giving Vladimir Putin everything he wants to see the West fail, to undermine Western democracy by proving that it doesn't work. That's what's behind their propaganda, ultimately, is to show their own people and really the world that an autocracy is a better form of government because democracies don't work. So that every time the Republicans are giving him proof of that it doesn't work by focusing so much on things that don't matter, things that don't help people, things that are patently absurd, that's helping Putin. And this is all not in my notes, so I'm freewheeling here for a moment, but just to say about the Hunter Biden laptop thing, Hunter Biden's already being investigated by the Department of Justice, and he should be investigated. If he's done something wrong or if it appears that he's broken a law, then like everyone else, he should be investigated, and he is being investigated. The issue will come down to whether or not what he did is something that other people are prosecuted for, and if it is, then he too should be prosecuted. That should be the principle under which our law is being implemented. And on this other side of that coin, we have Donald Trump, and he has not been held accountable for things that other people would be and have been. Not yet, anyway. So, the Hunter Biden thing, for Republicans to take that into the House when it has nothing to do with their role as oversight, because Hunter Biden never worked in the White House. That's just, it's a grotesque attack on Joe Biden, on his family. And I think I made this point on Twitter before, but it would be like investigating Tiffany Trump. She had nothing to do with the White House. The House should not be investigating family members who did not work in the administration. It's just not the place, unless there's some kind of connection established between that family member and the person who is in office. Then, of course, that's another story, but that hasn't happened here with Hunter Biden. So, go back to Kevin McCarthy. He's the one that's elevating Marjorie Taylor Greene, catering to the QAnon extremists, the anti-Semites, the racists, the worst bigots, all so he can hold on to power and become speaker. McCarthy saw what happened to Boehner and Ryan, and his answer isn't run, but rather, how can he prostrate himself even lower to the worst impulses in his party? And not only that, but empower them over the people by reinstating Greene to her committee positions. Is this a depth to which we have not plunged previously? I know you're probably thinking, hey, we survived Trump, and true enough, under Trump, the Republican leadership played coy to disguise their avarice. It was clear that Trump was signaling to the worst elements when some of his own conspiracies echoed on conservative media like Fox News were cited as the motivation behind mass shootings like the Tree of Life Synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. Somehow, though, it does seem worse because a speck of integrity and patriotism could stop this right now, could stop it in its tracks. But integrity and patriotism are not to be found in McCarthy's elevation of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Greene is no stranger to making inflammatory statements and even spreading conspiracies. She has claimed that the government was behind 9/11 and that Jewish space lasers, I think this is really ugly and really out there. It's just bonkers, but it's also dangerous. She said that Jewish space lasers were to blame for wildfires. And then in January of 2021, the Parkland families called for her resignation after a Facebook post surfaced in which she appeared to be agreeing that the 2018 mass shooting that murdered 17 innocent people was a false flag. Instead of addressing these posts, Greene pivoted to the exact same issue she is turning to as refuge for her "we would have won if I'd planned it because we would have been armed," which is her obsession with guns and blaming certain law enforcement while claiming to be pro-police. And in this case, she blamed the deputy for the shooting and claimed that schools shouldn't be gun-free zones. None of that is addressing her comments, her agreement with posts that claimed that this shooting was a false flag. There is a stark lack of personal responsibility and accountability. She also attacked the source, calling it communist bloggers. This lack of personal accountability is really stunning. The lack of morality is profound. The failure to even pretend to have a moral position at this point is concerning. This is a movement within the Republican Party that has taken over and is now running the whole show. One reason this tactic of claiming something with sarcasm that the Republican base knows isn't, works so well is evidenced in the success of the Babylon Bee, which markets itself as satire, without mentioning that the satire is usually aimed at Democrats, and the conservatives who read it actually believe it's news or treat it as news. And I know this from real-life discussions and online commenters using the Babylon Bee as a source for claims. And when they're called down on it, they claim the left can't take a joke, when the real point is that Republicans don't seem interested in even determining the facts. Instead, they will fall for anything that they can use to fuel their hatred of Democrats. Gay and trans people, Jewish people, women who aren't subservient, black people, black women, Latinos. The list of people they hate is endless at this point. It would be easier to ask who they don't hate. And I think that that's noteworthy. I think it's alarming. It's also not normal for an entire political party readying to take over an entire chamber of Congress in a democracy. This Trump tactic of saying something caught on video or audio and then denying it while pivoting to an attack on the source or general attacks on the current targets of the Republican Party, it does continue to work for those who weaponize this both sides compulsion of the media. But this White House is learning to use the bully pulpit to redirect the media to the actual facts and the issues. In this case, like maybe this person shouldn't be on committees. It's really a shame that our media is so weak and obsequious and married to this both sides are equal narrative that they have to be redirected to facts when real people's lives are on the line. That's what happens, not only with this ugly rhetoric, but with legislation. And Kevin McCarthy is putting this person who is saying that she would have been successful because of she would have been armed, and her, takeover of Congress, of the U.S. Capitol, would have been successful because she would be armed and the people would be armed. He is elevating her to committee positions where she will have authority and power over the direction of legislation that impacts Americans. All parties have extremists in them. The difference is here that the Republican Party is led by a man who tried to steal an election, including inciting a violent and deadly terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol, and is not only still the Republican Party leader, but is still trying to steal the 2020 election 2 years and a failed self-coup later. The Republican Party has elevated its worst elements to the highest levels of leadership. And that's why Kevin McCarthy's cowardice and refusal to condemn Green's comments matters. He is animating and empowering Green's dangerous extremism. It shouldn't be hard to condemn calling for an armed attack on the U.S. Capitol, but it is for the House Republican leader. And this fact evinces the grotesque moral depravity of the modern-day Republican Party. This is Sarah Jones with the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I do hope you consider subscribing and possibly gifting a subscription to our Substack, where we are elevating the concerns of the people, and we are not doing both sides access journalism. We are trying to keep the information on Politicus USA free for all, so we're using our subscriptions to our Substack to do that at this point, and focusing on how news impacts the people. So all of your support, your sharing of our Substacks, and even gifting them or subscribing, all of that is helping us do this, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and I look forward to talking with you next time.